Welcome to The Confidence Curve with Ashley and Rick Bowers, where personal and professional journeys define the art of scaling with confidence. Whether you're a business leader navigating change or someone seeking personal growth, this podcast offers insights and actionable advice to help you thrive. Now let's dive into today's conversation with our incredible guest.
Welcome. Here we are with the Confidence Curve podcast from Apex GTS Advisors. My name is Ashley Bowers, and my co-host, business partner, and husband, Rick Bowers, is here with me. Today, we are welcoming a very special guest. I first met her on a panel several months back, and we really aligned, and I think she's done amazing things scaling organizations and really developing her team and kind of keeping it all together in the process. So we have Heather Zorge with us today, CFO of evolvedMD. So Heather, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what brought you to your current role, and then we'll get started with some conversation.
Yeah. First, thank you both, Ashley, Absolutely. Rick, for inviting me. I'm so excited. This is my first podcast, so super fun. So I'm Heather Zorge. I'm the CFO of evolvedMD. I've been in the business for about almost 9 months going on. Evolved is a small business working on being big. It's actually the smallest business I've been in before, which is really exciting. What we do is we integrate behavioral health, mental health, into the primary care setting. So our co-founders, Eric Osland and Steve Bilgen, created the organization mid-2015 and have been off to the races since then. We contract with some of the largest delivery arm healthcare providers, primary care providers in the Valley. And we really work to put our behavioral health managers into the primary care setting and to provide them the mental health support that they need while also keeping the primary care doctor in the loop. So it's really cool. It's very innovative. I'm so grateful to be there. I started my career here in Arizona at PricewaterhouseCoopers, graduated from ASU, really grew up here. Arizona is near and dear to my heart. I love it. I love it. I love it. I choose to be here. I graduated from ASU with my degree in accounting, went into Big Four, PricewaterhouseCoopers, spent 5 years here, did all large public audits, just really ended up, met one of my best mentors. I think my first year is when I met her. I moved to DC, was in the DC office for about 3 years, left Big Four and went to Europe. That was really exciting with that mentor. I was the head of finance for a large oil company over there in Switzerland, did that for 3.5 years. And then in that time, I have a great husband, 25 years. His name's Neil, my best friend. And we have 2 boys that are now 21 and 19. So during all that moving, we moved to Europe. My husband decided to really couldn't work under my visa, so he was a stay-at-home dad for a while, which was amazing. Very well-educated stay-at-home dad, but he's so good at it. And then we did that for 3.5 years and just decided we needed to either stay there or come home. We can't, and home for us was here. And then I really got this, I'm in this niche where I have spent, since 2010, when we moved back, I've been the CFO, COO of various companies in the Valley, the majority of them being private equity backed or founder-led, looking to how do I make this thing grow and scale? How do I have the exit I want? Do I want to get my first money? All those things. So I've been in, honestly, I don't think I've been in the same industry twice. And yeah, I love supporting amazing CEOs that and founders that take really big chances, and then I can come alongside them and help them scale. So and evolvedMD, what led me there is I was looking for a place that really fit me culturally. I'm at a stage in my career now where I don't have to let the company choose me. I can choose them, and I can be really intentional about that. And Evolved, I know Centauri Minor is our chief of staff, and I've known him for years, and I just knew if he was, part of it was he was there, the culture was going to be great, and then I met Eric, and I met Steve, and all the team, and it's just, they're so great. And how often do you get to use your professional skill set in a business that is doing so much good in the world.
Yeah.
And that's really having fun, using my brain, learning, and doing good. So it was a really unique. That's me. That's how I got here.
So what's the biggest surprise or aha being in a small company now? Because you've been with some big companies for a while. So like, what is that thing that you're just like, this is amazing?
Yeah, I found myself, so when I look at issues or problems, I tend to say, there's someone here, there's someone smarter than us, whatever, that has done this before. So let's not spin our wheels. Let's go find that nugget, that smarter person, and make it simpler for ourselves. And not only because of the size of Evolve, but because of what we're trying to do. There are instances where I'm like, I actually, I don't know that there's going to be an easy. I think we're going to have to just make a decision, fail fast, and hope. And then know we have to be on the lookout. So that's been one thing that I've said that more often. The other thing is we're venture backed, and that's new to me. I primarily lived in either the public or the private equity world. And I had heard there would be differences, but I didn't totally understand, right? What would that mean? And it is different. And I think even operating in a position where you're having to really you always think about cash flow as a CFO, you always think about your runway, but this is a place where you're thinking about it even more. And you have to be really strategic about that, which you always are, but this is a different level of pressure when you're in a VC bag. So it's things like that. I think one thing that's been really interestingly surprising is this business is actually weirdly pleasantly surprising in the humans that they've invested in, how they do things. Like for the first time, the team I inherited is so great. And they're, nobody's perfect. They have stuff to learn, but boy, are they willing to, and they're open. And that's, because of who that business is. And so that's been a little surprising. I don't know. Yeah. I haven't seen a business like normally the businesses I go in are much larger and they don't look like that.
Right.
Right. And so that's been a little pleasantly surprising.
Good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I love the perspective of just like you can learn from everywhere. Oh. Right. If you want to, you can learn from anything, anyone, any situation, any size. And some people close themselves off to that. I'm like, you're missing just a huge opportunity to grow as an individual and to make even a bigger impact if you're a little bit more curious about the situation and take that learning standpoint. So you mentioned about failing fast. And one of the things I loved about the panel that we shared together was your vulnerability and just being honest of, letting other people learn from those failures, because that's where we learn the most, right? We all have our stories of getting it right, but the getting it wrong ones usually help people out a lot more. So can you share a time when you faced a significant failure, either in your career or within an organization, and just how did you handle it? How did you rally your team to be resilient in that time as well?
Yeah. I'm going to give you two. One that I had to rally myself.
Sure. And
one where I had to probably rally myself and my team, I'll be honest. I mean, there's a lot of those. So a really significant one, I had the pleasure of being the CFO of Western Window Systems, which was a really fast-paced, innovative window and door manufacturer here in the Valley. Amazing team, such a fantastic culture. And we had leadership principles there that our CEO was very intentional about. And the first one was love people first. The sixth one was do hard things. Another one was think gray. And there were so many, and they all contradicted each other. And when I was there, it was my first time in manufacturing. At first, when I got there, they had no cost accountant. I'm like, that feels not great. Let's maybe fix that. Yeah. And the systems weren't fantastic. So there's any number of things, right, getting in the way of getting inventory right. And it was after we had been acquired. So we were now on more of we were acquired by a public company. obviously very important to get things right. I understand that. And we had a really big miss, one of the biggest misses I've had in my accounting. And it was multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars that we had missed in AP. So it was the wrong way as well. It was one of those things that shouldn't happen because, you know, your last control with your accounts payable is your vendors yelling at you. Well, you know what I learned in that moment? If your vendor doesn't have a clue, you cannot at all rely on that.
Yeah.
And what I found in that moment was, one, I had to own it. We had missed some basics, but I also had to figure out why, because I had built, the team was fantastic. And what I realized through the learning and what I had to rally my team around was, one, we have to learn from this, and we can't keep it to ourselves. So this think gray idea, acknowledging failure, being curious. So I had to swallow my ego and go talk and pull my CIO, pull my VP of product, my CEO, sit in a room and be like, guys, I don't know how I missed this. We have a fundamental problem in what's happening, and I don't think it's just the AP was wrong. I think, and I don't want to miss that moment, but it takes me saying I failed, and I really don't want to do it again, and I'm going to acknowledge that while I'm the CFO of this company and accounting is my thing, I need your help. And what I learned through that moment was it's okay, and people want to help you. They want to be involved. And so you're almost denying them that by not letting them in. And I would have missed it, and I would have not learned from that. And the other thing, which I really had to help my team, because they all obviously felt terrible. It was a terrible timing. You've just been acquired, right? It's just nothing good. It was just nothing good about it. And I told my team, I'm like, look, I own this. We try to do really hard things here really quickly, and I love that. And what I forgot to tell you is I need you to do that, and you can't let go of the fundamentals. You can't, like, we had stopped reconciling something to go off and do something cool. And so it's my moment of always remember, trust but verify. Never lose sight of those things that you know, you get excited to go try and help and whatnot, and you can sometimes get into that mindset of it won't happen to me, and it can, and we can't do that to our companies. So that's a really big one that I would say was a rallying moment for myself and my team, and it still sits and resonates with me. And I still have to work on it, honestly. I trust too quickly, so I always have to work on that. Yeah.
So, I mean, throughout that story, you could hear the discomfort.
Oh, and it was years ago.
Yeah, and so you feel those things, but there's a lot of people that have written books and research and things out there that discomfort is where growth comes from. I know. And if you're in a situation where it's always comfortable, are you really growing and doing some of those kinds of things? And so how do you, maybe with a small company, it's more about yourself than it is from the team since it's a smaller company, but how do you help the team grow from some of those uncomfortable moments, or say get out of your comfort zone a little bit so that we can all get better?
I think the key I've found is letting them see that I don't know everything. And one could argue, I've been a CFO for a long time. I'm not going to talk about that. And so one could argue I should just know all the things. And what I find, to your point, Ashley, like I don't know all the things, even though I've been a CFO for God knows how many years. And so I really focus with my team on showing them it's okay to not know, but you got to go figure it out. And it's okay to fail, and we have to learn from it. So it's like all those ands, pulling the ands together, that I found worked. Like I had one of my controllers tell me I was the first boss that, it's really interesting. I had one controller tell me I was the first boss that made her feel safe to fail. And the growth she felt from that was tremendous because she wasn't scared. Yeah. She wasn't scared to come, oh, Heather, I missed this. Whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you missed it, and what did we learn from it, and how do we fix it, right? The other thing was, and I also had one of my VPs tell me I didn't let her fail enough. And that was very early in my career. Those are two very different messages. And so I try to learn from what my team is telling me as well. There isn't one size fits all for any of them.
Right.
And so how do you adjust yourself to, you know, what they need, but also hold, like I always tell people, my expectations are very high, and I had to get okay with that. But I'm also going to come alongside you as we work towards it, and I'm going to be compassionately accountable. But we are going to do the thing, and it's going to be hard, and you know you're gonna learn, and we're going to be clear and kind,
right?
Not nice.
Yes.
Which there's a very big difference.
Yes.
I don't know.
We used to always use the phrase, clear as kind. That's exactly what we would say all the time, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned a mentor in the beginning of the conversation when you're introducing yourself. How would you say that mentors have impacted you throughout your career? And is there a piece of advice that you received early on potentially that has just kind of stuck with you that you revisit when you're going through some of the harder times in your career?
All the time. I think that one thing I've learned in my career is if you're willing to listen, almost all people have something to teach you. And you have to kind of get out of your own way and your own head and your own ego and all those things, or even the personal side of it. Like, because sometimes you can hear things that could make you kind of curl in on yourself. So there's been, honestly, I've had so many. I mean, there's a couple little tidbits. My first mentor that I mentioned, she's phenomenal and such a strong female leader in oil and gas, which is crazy. And she taught me that, and that's really where I learned just to try hard things. And I remember one time she told me, I was a senior associate at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was acting as a manager on 2 of her large public jobs. So I was up, and she's handed me, in accounting, you have to do something called, it used to be called the physical, who knows what it's called now, but it's this huge list of things you have to do to make sure that your public filing is accurate. She's like, here, do this. I'm like, no, like, what, me? I don't do that. That's not what, like, senior managers do that because it's so important. She's like, go do it. If you don't come back to me with a zillion questions, you did it wrong. And I'm like, that's actually super fair and interesting. And she taught me, like, my second year that you need to, like, working for leaders and yourself, if you just go away and try to do something and acting like I know what I'm doing, it's not going to get you anywhere. And most humans actually don't expect you to do that. So it allows you to try really hard things. And I think that what that taught me is I don't shy away, and I actually go towards opportunities that I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Like when I went to Europe, I had no idea. I went over there to be the head of internal audit. I'm like, okay, super cool. I've been I'm senior manager at PwC. I can be head of internal audit all day long. I get there, and our head of finance was really struggling. And so Karen, within, I don't know, it was like 2 weeks. She's like, hey, why don't you just do the head of finance? I'm like, do what? You want me to do what? Yeah, we're going to go public in 3 months. And I need you to unwind this, do that, sell that. And okay, well, whatever. You've shown me that if I try, I can do it. And it just, why not? And you surround yourself with really smart people. You ask curious questions. You make mistakes. And then you're like, yeah, that kind of sucked, but we can fix it. Yeah. It'll be fine.
It reminds me of the conversation that we had. I was consulting for HomeSmart at the time, and the CEO took us to dinner and was like, hey, come back in a full-time capacity back at the president level, and I want to go public. And I just looked at him at dinner. I said, I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, I've never worked for a public company. I've never taken a company public. Like, let me hire you a team that knows what they're doing. Yeah. And he just looked at me and goes, no, hire yourself a team that can go do it, but you do it. And I mean, candidly, I remember Googling terms, being on calls with bankers and lawyers and investment advisors, and sometimes I would get really frustrated because they were using acronyms for things that they didn't need to use acronyms for. But that is part of the process. And everyone who worked on that team just looks back at the entire thing as the biggest learning moment of their entire career. No matter what role they played, it was just such a learning moment because it was really hard. We had no idea what we were doing, but we were determined to do it right.
Yeah. What made you do it? Like, why'd you say yes?
I don't know that I've ever been asked that question. I think in the moment, it was something that, you know, obviously I hadn't done before.
Yeah.
This is going to sound cheesy. I think actually, though, in that moment, I knew that I would protect him over the glory of going public. And I knew that
That's great.
by him having me do it and surrounding a team, like, that's what he was looking for, is to someone to still, like, have his best interests at heart versus someone who had done it and it was transactional. And yeah, that can get me a little emotional at the moment. But, like, yeah, I think keeping the culture, connecting with the people, and all of that was.
So he wanted your how. He wanted, like, how he knew you would do it, and he knew you could figure out the technical.
Yeah,
right?
Basically.
Like,
which at times went better than other times.
I'm
for
sure. I always find it fascinating how so many times we focus on the what, and it's like most humans can learn the what. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you can learn how to reconcile the thing or to fix that thing or to learn that process, but their how.
Yeah, that approach, the intention,
the integrity, the, you know, the why.
Well, and that was at the end when I was exiting and joining Rick and Apex. One of the things that we want to do are to help business owners exit, right? And go through that process. And I called one of our investment advisors and I said, you know, I have one question. Like, we hired everyone you referred to us, lawyers, bankers, like, you name it. We always went back to their people. We would do our due diligence, interview other people, but we always went back to their kind of stable of referrals. And I said, you never referred a coach to us. And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, for like at midnight when I can't get a model to work and the bankers are going to put us on hold, who do I call? You know, when you don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing in front of certain people, who's that person just to guide you step by step through the process that only has our interest at heart, right? And he actually laughed on the call and he was like, that doesn't exist, Ashley. So my next question, I was like, well, based on what I've done, do you think I'm qualified to do that? Because I feel like that's a gap. Because it is so stressful. It's such a crazy stressful process. And you just need your person in your corner as you're going through it. And thankfully he said yes, or I don't know that Rick would have accepted me in Apex, but
I don't know. I mean,
but I think some of that, back to your question of why you did it, it's everything happens for a reason. And the fact that you had that opportunity and that he trusted you with that, so that put some more behind what you wanted to accomplish and prove everybody else wrong because they put timelines on it and you beat the timelines and all of those things. But now, having said everything you said, what you're doing for our current clients is amazing things. And it's, I think, going to lead us into kind of that next phase of as Apex continues to grow as well.
it is fun because, like, you know, you're taking some of the pain away. You know,
boy,
just
boy,
that
are you.
little bit. And
You really are.
you know.
Probably more than a little bit. I'll be honest.
hope so. Thank
Having
you.
a great advisor that knows what they are doing and that you can connect with and be vulnerable with, because it's really hard when you're in a C position or higher VP, right, to show that I don't know.
Yeah.
And in a really critical moment, you don't want to show you don't know.
Right.
And so to be able to just be like, yeah, I don't know how to do this. Can you help?
Have that bat phone that you can
Yeah,
call.
that bat
and-
phone that you can call is really important.
So how have you gone about choosing a coach, more so than a mentor?
Yeah, so I do have a coach. She has changed my life. I've had a few. The first couple I had were kind of really early in my career. I would say they were chosen for me. I'm honestly, looking back, so glad that happened, because I don't think I would have known what good looked like. Because I think you can have coaches that 3 varieties, and I've had 3, and maybe there's more, but I've had 3. You have a really great coach that's focused on making Heather better in this environment.
Okay.
How do we make Heather better for this role, this environment? Or you can have a coach that's, how do we make this employee good for this company? It's a very different tone and tenor and discussion point, right? If it's the lens of what the coach is using. I found Christina, I was given Christina's name when I was going through my biggest failure, personal, in my first CFO role. And I was one of those people that always went up and to the right. I was always promoted early, ranked 1 at Big Four, do all the hard things. And then my first CFO role, I ran into a pretty big stumbling block. And it could have, I don't think if I hadn't found her and gone through that, it could have really changed the direction of my career. And so Christina is more my coach, and what I would encourage. I think I'm in behavioral health, and I love it. I think all humans need support, and I think all humans need someone who has nothing in it, but a lot of skill to really help, not tell you what to do, but to listen and guide you to the answer that you need to get to. And so what Christina has done for me is really help, and she would, when she hears this, she's going to hate that I said this, because she always says, I do the work, and she's right. I do the work, and she guides me through the work. It's a lot of work. It's hard. She focuses on who's Heather, and how do we make Heather her best self, her most confident self, her most accepted self. And this idea of you're in a box and you can be this CFO at work and this mom and a wife and a sister and a daughter and all the things all of us humans are going through every day and trying to show up and manage everything. You're just one human. And so that's how I would don't get a coach to get a coach. It's not worth it. It's going to be a waste of your time and your resources, or your company's resources. Get a coach because you want to know, who do you want to be, right? And be prepared for it being hard, and be prepared for maybe you're not in the right place for you and for where you can show up as your best self, and be prepared. So I've been with Christina for, it'll be 10 years in May. Wow. And so it's a lot of work. I love it and I hate it all at the same time. I actually don't hate it, but sometimes I don't enjoy her when she's making me look at really hard things. And I think also, I'll just be real, I think a lot of how we show up in high stress situations comes from your childhood and past things that you didn't even know you didn't deal with, but it's driving your behavior. And to truly accept yourself, you kind of need to know that. And it's never done. Like, I've realized, like, what it's done for me is I feel, I can tell. I can tell when I'm like, oof, little Heather's back. I need her to go back on the playground and let adult Heather continue to do this, because, she's really showing up right now. And so now I'm not showing up as my best self. So it's really allowed me to accept myself, and even accept all of my multitudes of flaws that I have in every hat that I wear. But I'm grateful for it, and I'm so glad I did it. And I'm more content with myself than I know I would have been if I hadn't done it.
This is going to sound like the weirdest analogy, but I equate coaching, like being a coach, to being an auditor.
Oh, interesting.
Because when you think about it, and learning this, trying to go public, right? Like, we had one Big Four company helping us get ready, but then we had a different Big Four company actually auditing us. And they're like, you pay them, right? You're technically their customer, but they're there basically to look at everything and to judge and critique and go through and form an opinion, right? And I feel like that's how businesses have to look at coaching, Because if I'm paying a coach to coach one of my executives, I am paying them. I am the customer as the business, but they aren't there for me. They're there for that individual. And that coaching might lead to that individual no longer being in the organization, and everyone needs to be okay with it because if they've gone through that process, it's what was right in that moment, right? So it's almost that same type of relationship from the transaction standpoint of I've heard, different owners and things. So, well, if I pay for a coach or I send to a peer advisory group, then they're just complaining about me. It's like, well, one, look at you. Like that sounds like a you thing.
Yeah, that sounds like a you thing.
But two, if they're needing that outlet in order for themselves to grow so they can handle things better and they can show up as their best self every day, why not do that? Even if maybe it leads to a relationship change, right?
Yeah, because either way, it's good for them too.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, as much as as uncomfortable as it is, everybody's better for it. And we lose that a lot, I think.
It goes to the joke of what if we pay for training and coaching for our employees and then they go somewhere else? And then the other guy says, well, what if we don't and they stay?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree with that. So good.
I love that quote.
I love that.
Switching gears just a little bit. So one of leadership's most challenging tasks is balancing high expectations with supporting our teams and developing our people. So as a CFO, how do you go about balancing the development of your people and executing the business strategy at the same time?
How do I do that? I guess I'm very intentional about it. I try to use techniques to fully delegate, which is different in my mind than just delegation. So not just delegating the work, but also delegating kind of the outcome and knowing that sometimes when I do that, I and they are going to fail, and that's okay, as long as we both learn from it. And so because if I don't fully delegate, I can't pick my head up, focus on the strategy. It won't allow me to spend the right amount of time with the humans that report to me, who in my role I've often found are very diverse. So I have, in my current role, I have business intelligence, implementation, IT, accounting, finance, people. So in that, if I don't delegate, I can't strategically do what I need to do for the business and Eric, my CEO. I can't be who I need to be for my peers, and I can't be who I need to be for my team. So I think full delegation is really important to being able to manage both. I'm very transparent with my team. So they always know where they're at with me, and I don't hide my expectations. So I am very clear about what good looks like for me. I do a lot of work to not do things for them. I learned that we often, one of my learnings in my career is I love people. I love seeing my team grow and achieve and become better than me, which so many have. Like, I have one of my past favorite humans that worked for me. She's the CFO of a public company in Oklahoma, and one that's a partner in a firm. And like, I still talk to them all. It's so great. So when you love people that much, you're like, ooh, they're struggling. Let me do for you. And I had to learn that you can't do that. Because then who fails? That would be me. So I try to really keep that in the forefront of, if I see them struggling, being honest about that, helping them work through techniques and tools to delegate, right? The urgent, the important. I also have, I don't remember what it's called, but also what do we actually not need to be doing?
Yes.
What, right? All the whole So just being like really intentional, knowing, frankly, that I need to spend most of my time at this level not doing things. Talking to humans, reviewing, thinking. So that's kind of that mixture of those things, and and really it's clear expectations, outcomes, and again, my term is compassionate accountability. Like, I am going to be super alongside you, and I'm going to hold you accountable. And I've learned you have to have some really, really hard discussions at times with some of your favorite people, and it's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I try to equate delegation with teaching.
Yes.
Like, you're not pawning your work off on another person to do it. You're helping them grow to the next level. Yeah. And so, but delegation is probably the most common thing I talk about when I'm working with leaders and things. Is they struggle with that because sometimes they don't trust the person that they need to do, or they've been burnt on it, and those kinds of things. So have you had to deal with, like, do I trust this person or not? And does the delegation sometimes build the trust back?
Yeah, I definitely have to do that. And I've learned the hard way that I trust too quickly, and it's really gotten me in hard places before. You know, I try to be super intentional now about being a trust but verify, and also monitoring the environment because you can get to where you totally trust someone, and then either something goes on in their life, and maybe they're not super upfront about that, and maybe you see a change in behavior, maybe something in the environment in work comes up, and right, and so I think that you need to be able to trust your team, but trust is earned, and so you really have to it's a constant. Like, I'll be honest, I don't think I've learned so many things. Like, leadership is the hardest thing, and you're never done, and I don't know that you can ever spike that ball,
Well,
right?
it's like culture, right? We're like, well, fix the culture. I'm like, okay, but
what does that mean?
Right, like, we can come in, we can evaluate, we can evolve, but you realize, like, it's never done. You can't put a check mark on it and say, okay, we're done. And just, I think when you think you get those things right is when they become the most fragile. You know,
That's actually interesting and probably really true.
Yeah, because you start taking it for granted. You're like, oh, okay, we're good. And then all of a sudden you have a different personality come in, or there's something's going on in the personal life or something where it's like, whoa, what happened? How did that break?
Yep. Have you guys seen, as you've worked with companies, like, what gets in the way? Like, what are the common things of either establishing trust or willingness to let go, which is almost the same thing, right?
Fear.
It's just fear.
I mean, fear is the big one because fear, like, kills transparency. When you're not transparent about what's on your mind, I mean, then it tends to fail. And, like, if you think about the 5 dysfunctions of a team, trust is the bottom level. Yeah. Results is on the top. People want results, but they don't think about what they have to do to get to the results. And once you build the trust at the bottom, and you can have those conflicting conversations where you're not taking offense to the conversations and things, and then you work your way up, then the results just happen naturally. It's the same thing with culture, I think, too. It's like, people say I need to fix the culture. I don't know that you can fix a culture. I mean, a culture is just like in the natural world. It grows on its own, and you need to make sure that the environment's right, the leaders are doing the right thing, so that the people feel trusted, and then the culture will just kind of flourish. But you don't fix it. It's not like something that's like, okay, I'm going to send it to the mechanic.
That is very fair.
You can't fix it. You have to nurture it.
Yeah, and be intentional about it, I think, right?
Yeah.
I think the other thing is speed of growth, I think, leads to lack of delegation and some challenges in that area, because a lot of companies, they'll grow so fast and they skip steps to implement proper, like, meeting cadences and, meeting rhythms, if you're a Vern Harnish fan, and communication tools and resources and process around that. And so all of a sudden when it's being implemented, it feels like, oh, we're getting corporate. Right? Like, that's the talk track.
That is the talk track.
Yeah.
You're right.
Versus it being something that the team can rely on and depend on and kind of lean into. And then I think when you have that type of really strong communication cadence, then it's easier to delegate because you feel informed too. Because it's not just about everyone else feeling informed.
No.
At the top, you feel like you're going to lose information and not be in the know. Because of that, I think that speed of growth can really add to that challenge.
It was funny. I had a conversation just 2 hours ago, and they were talking about, well, this person on the team doesn't feel like they have enough information, so when they're at networking events, they don't feel like they can answer questions. But if I were to tell you all of the things you think you need to know, then I'm going to say, and you can't say any of that at a networking event because it's confidential. But they feel better because they're in the know. So the problem wasn't that they didn't have enough information for the networking event. It was that they felt like they weren't hearing something. And so it's like, what is the true issue?
Well, and let's be real. When we're making up a narrative, it's never as good as the truth.
That's very true.
We always go to the negative when we're recruiting something. Let's talk a little bit about the personal. So, I mean, obviously, huge career, amazing accomplishments. But as you mentioned, being a mom, a wife, and a dog mom. Now, I thought we had a lot of fur babies. We have 3.
I have 5, and there's cats as well.
Oh, goodness.
Oh.
2 dogs, 3 cats.
Yeah.
Love
So-
them all.
What has been your secret? And I know it's not beautiful all the time because nothing ever is, but what's been your secret of balancing, an amazing career, amazing professional life, and everything at home and showing up the way that you would like to on the home front?
It's been a journey. I think one thing is my husband, his willingness to, really put aside his career, right? Poor guy got his MBA, and he's always like, I'm the most well-educated, CEO of a home ever. His willingness to do that. We made a decision for us personally. I think it's so personal how you choose to raise your family. We didn't want, just for us, again, no judgment of any, we didn't want nannies to raise our kids. And so we just decided we'll just make do, be a one-income family, and whatever that looks like. He worked part-time for a long time, but it gave him great opportunities to be a soccer dad and all the things. And I think for both of us, it's weird. It worked out, it's not traditional, right? And we both felt awkward in very specific situations. I'm the mom at the meeting, the whatever meeting, parents meeting or whatnot, that nobody knows how to talk to because I don't know what they're talking about, nor does it. It's just not, because I'm not doing that every day. And my poor husband shows up. There's never a dad anywhere at any of the meetings, which is fine. It's just what works for us. Yeah. So I think that support and just both of us being intentional what partnership looks like. And it's not been easy. We've had rounds and really understanding, right? Because we both gave something up. I gave up the time with my kids. He gave up his career. And I think working really hard together to understand that we both gave something up, right? It was important. And then honestly for me, I had to learn to be very honest about my boundaries. And that was later in my career. And that was a lot of coaching. I never, I remember Christina and I talking, and one thing that always resonated and what really I think changed it for me is she said to me, Heather, your job can't always win. And I don't know that I had ever thought about it that way, that when I'm choosing to always do that, my kids are losing, I'm losing, my sister, whoever, right, my mom, and it's like, how do you find that balance and be comfortable with what that boundary looks like? So I started in my later, when I moved back here, and the weird thing is, I would say for any working mom, what I found is just my experience with my children is that when they're younger, they're really focused on just their world. So when you're in it, they're super thrilled. And when you're not, they're like, whatever, I've got my whatever I'm watching or whatever I'm doing. And so I did a lot during that time. And what shocked me, I'll be perfectly honest, was when we moved back to Arizona, I worked in Big Four for almost 9 years, and I worked a lot. And then I went to Europe, and I had never worked more in my life. And so I thought for sure, right, everyone's going to be so happy when we come here, and I'm like working like normal human, at least my perspective, right? And my kids were like, you're always gone, you're not showing up. And it shocked me, and it rocked me a lot, because I was thinking mom's winning, and now mom's losing. And I didn't want them to feel that way. And so I just started being intentional. When I took my second CFO job, I still remember the conversation because it was really hard because I really wanted the job. I said, hey, my sons are in soccer. I'm never going to miss a game. That's just a hard limit for me. I'm not, like, I decided how how am I going to do that so that both win? It did, and I had to be realistic, meaning I chose to be a CFO. I chose to be a CFO that does a lot of deals. I have certain standards, and so thereby there are going to be times where I have to work from Hawaii or from that vacation, or we're doing deal, and my family had to come around me on that. So it's always just this constant, like, what's going to work? What phase in your career are you in? And you can, and you have to be kind for your. I guess that's the other thing is, like, I never used to be kind to myself. I never gave myself any grace, and I'm really trying to be intentionally kind to myself, and it's okay if I screw up for a week and I'll get it right again. I'm try to be really religious about working out. So, like, doing those things that are going to get you started and are going to get you to keep cadence. So that's how it's messy, and you mess up and you say sorry, and you make sure that, because it's all important. Like, I love my job.
Right.
And so I don't, obviously I love my kids and my husband, all the things more, like, obviously. Yeah. But a lot of who I am is who I am as a professional.
Right.
And I don't think that's bad per se, but.
My brother last week looks at me, he goes, your hobby is working. And I said, what? And he's like, you need a different hobby. Like, your hobby is just to work.
Interesting.
And I had never thought of it that way.
I haven't either.
Yes, I enjoy working. Like, I love sitting down and, getting into things and coming up with ideas and working. Like, and I don't see a challenge with that.
You're like, it works for me.
Yeah. But I think, to your point, a book that I read in 23 when I was kind of making the decision of when do I need to start putting some boundaries and things on it, was called Breaking the Glass Slipper. And it was really great. It's kind of like Rachel Hollis-ish, but what I would say, like, more adult. I think it's Elaine Turner wrote it. And it just really makes you think through all the different things and being okay with whatever it is that you want. So it's really good about not saying what's right to want and what's not, which some of the books important. Are, right? Mm-hmm. But really kind of what is, I'm actually starting to reread it again right now because I was in a different phase then. I'm like, what different tips will I pick up from it this time around, right? But I think to what you said, if, like, you had to have the hard conversation, I think it's easy, men or women, I think as we're working through our careers, to feel like certain things are being done to us, right? And that it's required and it's expected. But if we never if we never set the boundary, if we never articulate the boundary, oftentimes the asks are coming in because you never say no.
You never say no.
Right? Or you never ask for help or those kind of things. So how much of it really is on us as individuals?
I think a lot.
To raise our hand and use our voice and put those boundaries up, because most companies are going to work with that, right? If you're giving your best whenever you're there and you're present, most companies are going to work with that. And we actually have a client, they have a rule, as you mentioned, and their rule for their entire company is never miss a game. And it doesn't matter if it's a game, a dance recital, a gymnastics meet.
Idea.
Yeah.
I love that.
So for all their kids, like, it's always
you show up,
you go.
Yeah. I wanted to highlight just one thing, just because it brought up. I think this is something a lot of people really struggle with, younger especially. I remember I was in DC. I was working for a partner. I was trying to work part-time. In Big Four. I was the manager of the largest public client in the DC office, and I was trying to work part-time for multiple reasons. And I remember I started feeling like I was working more, and I was really mad at Larry. He was my partner. And I remember going in with all sorts of just I'm right feeling, right? Mm-hmm. Being so mad at him. And he's like, Heather, it's really interesting. He goes, well, we agreed you were going to work part-time, right? I'm like, yeah, that's my point. And he's like, I don't work part-time. True. I'm like, where are we going? Like, this is going to be fascinating. Where is this going to go? And he goes, do you think I have in my brain exactly what your part-time schedule looks like? I'm like, no. He's like, do you think when I need something, I'm going to, like, check and make sure? Am I going to call or send an email? And I'm like, you're probably going to call or send an email. He's like, so whose fault is it if you pick it up? And I was like, I just got, that's because I'm a very accountable person. Like if I can figure out where I did it wrong, I'm going to own it, even if I only should own 2% and somebody else should own 98. I'm like, oh my God, it's all my fault.
Well, yeah, but if we own it, we can fix it.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And that was one of the most, and I use it with my team all the time, because I often tell them, like, look, guys, I'm not going to control. Here's the boundaries. Now, if you come to me and say you need this and I tell you to go pound sand, then that's a whole nother discussion. But I am not going to manage your life for you. And I think learning that at that stage in my career was so powerful for me to, like, really, and I mean, obviously I still had to learn it because I didn't set boundary and all the things, but then I just blame myself for it at least. I knew where that belonged. But I think as we work through our careers, making that separation is so important, of what should you hold your leader accountable for versus what do you need to hold yourself accountable for. So it was a good one in my learnings.
Really quick before we wrap up, what was your favorite place to visit when you lived in Europe?
Oh boy, favorite. There was a place, one, I love Rome. I don't know, Rome is such a interesting, fascinating, beautiful, historic city, and so I really loved Rome. My husband and I spent an anniversary in Monaco. That place is super cool. And then there was a really small town in Switzerland, and right now my brain is going absolutely blank, but hopefully it might come to me. But it was basically pretty close to us, and it was a little town that you had to take a gondola to, and there was no cars up there. And then you could take another gondola, I think it was to the top of the Schilthorn. And it was just such a neat little town that made you, like, it was so Swiss. And I loved that town. But there's so many great places. I'm so glad I did it. So much. There was so much eye-opening happening when you live in Europe versus being in the U.S. So it was super great.
Yeah. Amazing. We love traveling, and so it's always fun to hear people's favorite places. So with that, thank you so much for being here. I know that you are hiring and growing as an organization. So if our listeners want to reach out to you or to get in touch with the company, where should they go?
evolvedMD.com. We are a really people-first, culture-first, mission-driven organization. Lots of opportunity, tons of great people trying to do good in the world and solve a really important problem that's facing every age group that we have. And it's just a really incredible place. I'm on LinkedIn, and either way.
Well, thank you again
so
much for
both.
being here. We
so
appreciate
great.
it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to The Confidence Curve. We hope today's episode left you inspired and ready to embrace your journey confidently. Remember, whether you're leading a team, growing your business, or pursuing personal growth, each step forward builds your curve. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. For more insights and resources, visit us at apexgts.com. Until next time, keep climbing the curve.